Elon Musk's SpaceX was called in to essentially rescue a space mission or two astronauts who were stuck at the International Space Station. I'm here with the Center Square regional editor, Steve Wilson. Steve, can you tell me why the U.S. decided to go outside of NASA to figure this problem out and why it didn't happen earlier?
The astronauts that were up there that were stranded, they were testing the Dreamliner spacecraft, which is manufactured by Boeing, and there was a problem with the spacecraft's propulsion system. And it was only supposed to be kind of like Gilligan's Island, an 8-hour tour. But it turns out that this turned into a 268-day mission that they just ended up integrating them into the crew of the ISS. And what happened was there was all this political wrangling about it. Elon says the Biden administration rejected his offer to go rescue the astronauts. They say that's not the case. The astronauts say that there was no political issues involved with it, with having them up there, and that they weren't stranded. But to me, it's just not a good look for our nation's space agency, especially when the nation is grappling with $36 trillion in debt.
Steve, what do you think the takeaway is for this, for the future of NASA and kind of this U.S. space program in general? We've seen a lot of privatized moves towards I guess, being better at it than the U.S. And what do you think goals are in the future for NASA?
I think the problem with NASA right now is I remember NASA was an aspirational thing. There was always a great mission that they were working on. You obviously had John F. Kennedy, who famously said, by the end of the decade, we will put a man on the moon. And guess what? We did it. Then we built Skylab, which was fascinating, the first space station. Then we started to build the space shuttle. The space shuttle was my generational aspirational thing. I remember watching the first space shuttle launch and just being mesmerized. And obviously the Challenger, the Columbia disasters, that's been a definitely hurt NASA. But I think the thing that's hurt NASA the most is, what are they going to do? What is that one singular thing that people can get behind and say, we ought to spend billions of dollars on this because it's good for mankind? I don't see that now. I mean, you look at the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. The Boeing company took a more than $500 million loss on that craft. And in addition to their problems with the 737 MAX commercial aircraft, the KC-46 tanker, Boeing investors have just taken a bath. And you just have to wonder what's going to happen next. I think the administration needs to come up with a coherent plan and give people a reason to, I hate to use a cliche, reach for the stars.
Steve, one of the things we always focus on are the taxpayer dollars involved in something like this. And you brought up all the debt the federal government's in. And we're talking about missions that what Reuters estimated it was 100 million to 150 million for the SpaceX trip to even occur. One of the reasons they didn't go get those astronauts right away, that they said, were the costs involved. How much is all of this costing, and what's the value for?
See, that's the thing. It's a good point you brought that up, because one of the things that was great about the space program is there were so many technologies that filtered down to the consumer level. You think about the microelectronics revolution. You think about advances in materials like Mylar. Now, I'm not going to say Tang was an advance because that stuff is nasty. But anyway, the thing that I find fascinating is we just don't have that technological bleed down to consumers now. Elon has done a great job with developing with SpaceX and their Dragon, which holds 7 people. That's a lot of people to put in one space capsule. But the thing is, I think what they need to do is figure out a way to get the public just just captured by the lure of space travel. But Mars, you think about, it would probably cost $1 trillion to send people to Mars.
When you look at putting Elon, who's obviously in charge of certain things with the federal government right now with Doge, when you pay his company money in order to do something like this, is it literally that he's the only one that had that technology that could do it, or is there something nefarious going on with him getting a bunch of money and his company being involved? Like, I think
a lot of people could really look at this and say that, well, Elon's tight with the president. Of course, they're going to go to him. They're not going to go to, say, Jeff Bezos and his Blue Origin company, which, I mean, that would be fair. But I think the thing is it just, for me, it's not a good look. The fact that Trump and Elon are so tight and interconnected, it's just, to me, it's not a good look. And I think it's getting to be harder to justify, considering that we're, like I said, we're $36 trillion in debt, pouring billions into a NASA that just, it isn't what it once was. All those great engineers and scientists, where are the next generation? The thing is, when I was a kid, the coolest thing that you wanted to grow up to be was either the president of the United States or an astronaut. And I just don't think kids now want to be an astronaut. And that's a shame.
What do you think's next in this? I know that they're going to do more trial missions of Boeing, but what do you think?
I think that NASA's, from what I saw at the news conference the other day, I think they're going to stick with the Dreamliner, even though in the way it works, we're not taking that loss. Boeing, because I think it's a cost plus contract. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. They have to eat the losses on it. And like I said, their investors have taken a beating over it because the thing has a lot of problems. And it's just crazy to think that these space capsules, which were really no more different than what happened in the 60s, we can't build that anymore. And we can't build it reliably. And I think part of that too, I don't know if you remember back in at the end of the Cold War, when Dick Cheney was the Secretary of Defense, he had what they called the Last Supper, where he literally sat all the defense contractors in there and he said, the contracts of the good old days are gone. You either combine or you die. And what happened was we're down to like 3 companies now. Because you used to have McDonnell Douglas, you used to have Vought, you used to have Grumman before it combined with Northrop Grumman. Now you got 3 companies. And you don't have the competition. And I mean, granted, Elon and Jeff Bezos are trying to add some competition to that. But I think the future of NASA is actually commercial space. I think those guys have figured out a way to get there, and they've got the money to do it, and they've got the want to. And I just don't see the want to on the government side.
Steve, thanks again. Always appreciate your insight. You can follow along with this story at thecentersquare.com.